everybody's having a great day and had a great week. My name is Troy Lamel Stovall. I'm the Chief Executive Officer and Executive Director of Maryland TEDCO. I am so happy today to have someone who represents the definition of servant leadership, has served the state of Maryland and the nation in many ways, and me at a personal level has become a guidepost and a mentor in my early days here at TEDCO, and all of that to introduce Dr. Phil Singerman, who was the very first executive director for TEDCO. So we're going to spend some time, as I told him already, bouncing down memory lane. But Phil, thank you for joining us today.
My pleasure. Delighted. Thank you, Troy. And
thank
congratulations on your appointment.
Well, we'll keep seeing if I can get congratulated or not. You'll tell me if I can get congratulated or not. Phil, why don't you tell us a little bit about your, it's been a wonderful journey, and I know we could spend all day, but just gives folks a sense of kind of your journey. And I gotta, obviously looked at your background, and we've talked about it, but I gotta say congratulations. You got a lot of awards, but one of these, you recently were inducted into the Fellow of the National Academy of Public Administration. I mean, to me, that's a testament of your journey and the role that you've played for the nation and for Maryland. So thank you for that. But why don't you give folks a little sense of what you've done?
So thanks. That's very kind of you, Troy. I'm really delighted to be talking with you today. So my career has been in public administration for 4 decades at the local, state, and federal levels. In Pennsylvania, I was the first director of a program called the Ben Franklin Partnership, which is a local nonprofit public instrumentality, very similar to TEDCO. In the late 90s, I served as U.S. Assistant Secretary of Commerce for Economic Development under Bill Clinton and Ron Brown, and I was the head of the Economic Development Administration. And after that, I was asked to join this brand new organization, the Maryland Technology Development Corporation. And I started with a desk in the DBED's office in Baltimore and a part-time secretary and a piece of paper that was our legislation and a $500,000 seed grant from then Secretary Mike Lewin to start the organization.
That's great. And
so that's how I got to TEDCO, and it was a fabulous opportunity, and I really look back on that time and still with great fondness. We had a great board. Bev Byron, who was then a former member of Congress from Western Maryland, was the chair. I mentioned Mike Lewin. Bill Hanna, who was on the Montgomery County Council, was a member of the board. Bill Dessler, who was the head of graduate programs at College Park, on the board. Jean Deloach, who was the dean of engineering at Morgan State. So it was a terrific board, and we launched this new organization. So subsequent to that, I had a variety of positions, but most recently I stepped down from the National Institute of Standards and Technology, NIST, after 10 years as the Associate Director for Innovation and Industry Services. And in that capacity, I was able to re-engage and support TEDCO's programs again. I was delighted for that.
And now you're working with our friend Ben Wu, who was our first person here on TEDCO Talks, and you work with Ben as an advisor, correct?
That's correct, on federal engagement and technology transfer and commercialization. So I'm continuing to serve in my swim lane. I'm delighted.
So one of the things you taught me so much, but one of the things that, because of my love for history, you taught me about the initial connection of TEDCO to Western Maryland. And how Western Maryland had such a strong leadership. Why don't you let folks know a little bit more about that?
Right. So we made a number of kind of strategic decisions at the beginning of at the start of the organization. The question was, where could we provide value? And so we adopted a number of organizing principles. One is that we would maintain a small staff footprint, and we would work with partners. We would take advantage of the federal facilities in the state. We would build upon the business incubation network, which existed then and continues to exist. And we also decided that Montgomery County, Howard County, Anne Arundel County, those places given our modest resources at the time, there was not a lot that we could do there, but we could do a lot in rural Maryland, Western Maryland, Southern Maryland, the Eastern Shore, and urban Maryland, the city of Baltimore. So that's that was a very early focus, and I'm pleased to see that the Rural Business Innovation Initiative continues. I mean, that's a program that that the germ was 20 years ago, and so that's continued, and I think it's really the organization has continued to make a major contribution in those areas, and it has brought great support to the organization as well, as it should.
No, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And it's a really small budget in terms of the size of it at TEDCO, even to this day. But their impact out is far, in a multiple effects. And just so you know, just in the last few days from this taping, I spoke to representatives from a number of groups in Western Maryland, and then I also spoke to a number of groups on the Upper Shore region.
Yep.
Just to stay, even in this COVID environment, staying connected and continuing a lot of the work that you did.
Congratulations.
So Phil, you had a couple of things in there we could touch on, but let's start with the federal labs, right? The federal labs piece, because clearly you've worked at a federal labs, and it's better than anybody. The stand about to make is that Maryland has more federal assets than anybody, than any other state. I mean, but we haven't really leveraged them in ways that many other states have leveraged them. So talk to me about kind of how you see kind of go forward. I don't know if we just hired a new person in our federal Kim Bazingo, who I think you know.
Yeah.
So talk to me about how the role the federal labs have to play in trying to driving this innovation culture for Maryland.
So Maryland's distinctive competitive advantage is the density and diversity of the federal research institutions in the state that go from Aberdeen, the Army in the Northeast, to the Navy in Southern Maryland, Frederick NCI in Western Maryland, and of course the density in Anne Arundel and Montgomery County. And so this is a major source of strength for the state, and it's always been a focus. It was one of the areas of focus at the very beginning of TEDCO. How can we take advantage of the technology and the talent that resides in these institutions? And so one of the very first areas of opportunity for TEDCO was to engage robustly with the federal research institutions. So we entered into at least a dozen partnership intermediary agreements so that we became enablers and facilitators between the labs and the broader stakeholder community. We generated federal funding to support that. We supported companies that were licensing technology from the labs and entering into CRADAs. And that's something that you've continued. And I know that you're very interested in enhancing that now, which I think is quite smart. The other area that we did not focus on then, but you have focused on more recently, is the talent that resides in our federal research institutions. And certainly in terms of entrepreneurial opportunities, I would, or assets, I would point to the thousands of postdocs and graduate students that work in our federal research institutions and our universities as well. This past October, TEDCO and NIST and Montgomery County partnered to convene a networking opportunities conference for postdocs. A similar event is being planned for May with the National Institutes of Health. TEDCO has, NIST funded TEDCO to run a program that would provide funding and technical assistance to postdocs who are leaving NIST who want to start a company. And I think that's a program that we at the Montgomery County Economic Development Corporation are looking at to both expand and deepen. So there's a real opportunity there for engaging with that community. To go back to the technology issue, just this week, you were one of the principal sponsors of a webinar informing the stakeholder community of legislative proposals and regulatory reforms that would improve the ability of companies and other nonprofit organizations to work with federal research institutions in tech transfer.
Yep.
And I think that's a major opportunity, because to the extent that we make it easier for companies to work with federal research institutions like NIST, like NIH, like NASA, then that will disproportionately benefit Maryland because of the proximity and density of those organizations in the state. So that's an area where you you are uniquely the state leader in that space. And so I think your role, your awareness and leadership in that area is really critical, and I think very promising for us.
No, I couldn't agree more. In talking to Kim again, who just joined us this week of this, we talked about the idea, Phil, of being able to, so many times we talk about how do we get stuff out of the labs. Maybe we need to first think about how do we get beyond into the gate and behind the gate first,
right?
And because and how to help them then bring it out of the gate, as opposed to sitting outside the gate and trying to pull it out.
Right, that's right. That's right.
And so she's very excited about looking at this a little differently. And so you're right. If we can harness that, because if you look at other, other states that have really harnessed their states' federal lab resources, you have things like in California and like in Massachusetts, and there's no reason we can't do that here in Maryland.
Right, and that's an interesting point. So I actually disagree a little bit. I don't think very many states have done a lot creatively to work with their labs. Some have, where there are densities of labs, like in California, they've done more. In Massachusetts, they've put in a fair amount of money into engaging with federal research institutions, particularly the Manufacturing Innovation Institutes. And in Pennsylvania, historically, over the past 40 years, through the Ben Franklin program and others, has invested significantly greater amounts per capita on these types of activities than Maryland. If I were to fault the state has not invested resources in TEDCO, for example, and similar entities proportional to its size and the opportunity. And so as a result, the programs are very good that you have and that also exist generally, but we haven't put in the amount of support that is needed to really leverage the asset that we uniquely have.
Don't disagree, man. And don't disagree. We can spend a lot of time on that, but just to shift just slightly, you mentioned obviously your role with Montgomery County now, and Montgomery County clearly is a huge economic engine for the state of Maryland. So maybe folks want to, and Ben talked about that obviously. So not so much about Montgomery County per se, Phil, but more about the counties themselves, right? Yeah. And clearly, as you kind of talked about, Maryland is really a mix of about 4 or 5 regions between Western Maryland and the Shore and Southern Maryland and the DMV and then Northern Maryland.
Right.
But how those counties have to play this role, both competitively in some cases, but cooperatively in many others, in order to really enhance this innovation culture that you helped begin with the beginnings of TEDCO, and I'm trying to continue now.
Right. So it's a very interesting question, and it's not one that we at the beginning we thought about very much. We had geographic programs, as you mentioned, Western Maryland, Southern Maryland. And we really doubled down on the incubators that existed there, and we funded a number of new incubators with capital, and we supported the entire incubator network with program dollars, both state, and we were able to source federal dollars to deploy resources and program activities through the incubator network. But we didn't work directly with the county governments, except to the extent to which they were involved, as in Montgomery County, for example, or Baltimore with their incubator facilities. But counties bring very different assets and perspectives to to this question. So they have things that TEDCO does not have. They have obviously control over land, they have taxation, they have regulations, they have legislation, they have funding, and all of which affects new business formation and growth. And so I think there's a real opportunity for TEDCO to partner with the counties, both individually, as we've been doing with Montgomery County, but also with such organizations. You mentioned, the 5 regions, the Maryland National Capital Region Economic Development Alliance, which is the six counties, suburban counties surrounding the District of Columbia. So I think that's a real opportunity for TEDCO. And counties also bring they're part of the federal system through the states. And as we've seen through the CARES Act, money gets deployed through the state and then through the counties. So Montgomery County is, carrying out, as you are, a number of state-funded programs. So and they have they're aligned politically through the political parties. And so the counties can bring influence, advocacy through their county councils, their state legislative representatives, and their congressional delegation to support the goals that TEDCO, for example, embraces in a way that a nonpartisan nonprofit organization such as TEDCO and similar cannot. So the counties can be really strong. It's a coalition of the willing, and I think that you have an opportunity through the kind of the shaping of the programs that you manage to bring the counties into a closer connection to TEDCO.
I appreciate you saying coalition of the willing. So folks I said it a little bit at the beginning, how much Phil has been a guidepost for me. And as much as he's talking to all of you, he's really giving me a lot of great counsel. So in that stead, Phil, as you think back 22 years and you kind of fast forward, to now, how do you think about TEDCO, and its evolution over these 22 years? And again, like you said, talking to me, and you've kind of given me some of this kind of on myself, so you can share the audience, kind of what do we have to start to looking towards as we move forward?
So thank you for asking that question. And, full disclosure, you'd set me up with these questions. And so I've been thinking, spoiler alert. So I've been thinking about it. So I haven't been surprised by TEDCO's evolution, but I've really been delighted by it. So programs like TEDCO in other states don't survive for 20 years dramatically. During these 20 years, there have been 4 different governors. And in other states, a new governor comes in and he gets rid of the programs that the old governor put into place. But we've alternated Democratic and Republican governors, and TEDCO has maintained its broad support in the legislature. And TEDCO was originally a legislative initiative, and I believe it remains so.
That's correct.
The second, so that's a positive thing, and that's a very precious relationship, as you know, that has to be nurtured. So that's not surprised me, but it's delighted me. The other thing that has delighted me is the entrusting of additional funding programs by the state to TEDCO. So just as I was leaving in 2006, the stem cell research program was established. But since then, there have been a number: the Maryland Innovation Initiative Program and the Maryland Venture Fund, which has provided an enormous amount of resources for an organization like TEDCO, which to oversee. So that's been those have been 2, I think, very positive things. And I would attribute it to a couple of characteristics of the organization. One is there's been an interesting consistency of senior leadership. So your lawyer, Ira Schwartz, I think he's still your lawyer,
He still is.
He's been there since the beginning. Dan Ginsel's been there, I think, for 15 years. He's your VP for universities and the head of the stem cell program. Ron Casey, who just stepped down full-time, is still with you, I'm sure. He never retires. Over 20 years. Stephen Allville, a decade. Bill Bernard, who's in the Lower Shore. I worked with Bill when I was there, so he's been there, I think, 15 years. So, you've had excellent executive directors in the past, Renee Winsky, John Wassilison, they all. So I think the consistency of senior leadership has been a strength of the organization. And I would conclude that really the model of the organization, the design, that is, it's a public instrumentality. It carries out a public purpose with private sector perspective.
I like that. Yep.
You have a board that's private sector oriented, and they understand the need of focus, of execution. So those are hallmarks of successful private organizations, and the ability of the organization to mirror that is important, while it is both transparent and accountable to its public stakeholders. So both of those attributes of the organization's design are really critical. So moving forward, if I might, in terms of what challenges or opportunities lie ahead, I would say that as you lead the organization into its third decade, what you will be doing, obviously, and this is a national challenge and it's a civic challenge, equity, diversity, and inclusivity.
Yep.
This is a hallmark of both the appointments and the policies of the new Biden administration, and it is something that I know that you and your management team are very all in on, and that's really important. It's reflected in the diversity of your staff. You have a very diverse staff, which is terrific, and that's a critical step. And it's hard for economic development organizations because traditionally they have not focused on issues of equity and diversity. Generally, that is, some organizations are specifically focused on those issues, but more general organizations like TEDCO and Montgomery County Economic Development Corporation have not had those as part of their mission, but now they are, and we all need to step up and engage with those. So that's a major challenge and opportunity.
Yep.
For every organization. It was a challenge and opportunity when I was at NIST, and in all aspects of society.
Yeah, so a lot there, and I appreciate, again, like I said, the counsel to me and for our audience to hear. But two comments, I guess. One is we really are trying to feel intentional about leading with our core values. And driving and everything that we do is from those core values of accountability, collaboration, integrity, respect, and stewardship. I mean, that's foundational. And to the field, we're even trying to get to the point where we're trying to put metrics in place so that we can show that we're actually doing that and have our language as we communicate to one another. We can say, if I don't do something or don't live up to something, I can say I didn't live up to the values of stewardship or collaboration and how we speak to one another.
That's very
so just letting you know, that's kind of how we're thinking about it now. And you're dead on about diversity and inclusion and equity. The legislators have made it a very key part of their plank, particularly on the House side, but on both sides.
Yeah.
The Senate and the House have both made it. We've had a chance to input into that conversation. On the Senate side, Senator Griffiths had a workforce on equity and inclusion, and we've got to have some commentary on that. And actually, some of our recommendations are included in her recommendations from her work group. And then on the House side, we spent some time talking to Speaker Jones and members of the Black Caucus, and so they have an agenda which we're included in that. Our Builder Fund is included in that.
Great.
So you laid the groundwork for all of that, and so you're right. And the last thing I'll say to that is and I've talked to this about some of my previous TEDCO talks. We spend a lot of time when we say the word entrepreneurship. Phil, too many times I think we're constantly talking about the founder, when there are people who are entrepreneurs who aren't the founders per se, but they're part of that first part of the team. And so part of what we want to do, Phil, is make sure that we're diversifying that team as well, not just talking about the founders. But how do we make sure that team is diversified and represents all of Maryland?
Right. So so that's all about the talent pipeline, and which is a broadly accepted bipartisan concept, right? Nobody is opposed to building the talent pipeline. So that's a positive thing. You know, we can run with that. We can move with that. And it, you know, we when I was at NIST, we were developing a mission statement, and we were struggling with we were struggling with the concept of diversity, because it historically has, some people have put a negative connotation, but when we put it in terms of the broadest concept of diversity, and that diverse points of view contribute to a better outcome.
There you go.
Then that was the rationale for diversity.
There you go.
And I think that's the rationale in you know, one of the rationales for what you're saying, and underlies, you know, the need, and you know, smart entrepreneurs recognize, to appeal to the country and the world, which is a diverse place, they need a diverse workforce to be in touch with the realities of people's lives. So
no, to emphasize your point on two levels. One is, not only do you have the diversity of opinions so that you can look at a problem with a different lens and then try to find that, but it also opens up the possibility of other markets and other spaces that you wouldn't think about going into, because you only saw the world from one.
That's right.
Yeah. So look, man, as we close out, I want to try to have some little fun with you, if you don't mind.
Not at all.
So I'm gonna say just a few words, and first, you know, kind of fast, furious. First thing.
I'm not prepared for this. I haven't.
Yeah, well, you ain't supposed to be prepared for. That's the whole point. You're supposed to, you know, just kind of stream of conscious. Okay. COVID.
Sick.
Montgomery County.
Buoyant.
Yale University.
Old fashioned.
You got your friends from Yale about to send you a bunch of texts. Western Maryland.
It's beautiful.
There you go. TEDCO.
Oh, wow. Robust.
Oh, wow. Robust. That's a new one. Actually, we'll have to add that, have to have Tammy add that to the adjective list. My last one for you. Bow ties.
Coming back. Old school.
That's good. Phil, thank you. I enjoyed it. I continue. You enrich me. You know, you've enriched. I've appreciated our times that we've been able to chat and talk. And you sent me stuff, and I really do appreciate. But I more importantly appreciate your what you've done for the state and what you've done for the nation. Really do appreciate that.
Well, thank you, and thank you for your leadership. And if I could end with
please,
a slightly facetious note, which your team may edit out. I forgot to mention, in terms of the consistency of the organization, you still have the same logo. So, and I designed it. With others, we designed
well, there you go. See,
but I give you permission to change it for the next decade.
We will take that into consideration, but I love it. It works for me, so I'm good. Phil, thank you again. I appreciate the time today. And to our audience,
so much. I'm honored to be part of your enterprise.
Yeah. So
your supportive team.
Appreciate you. And again, I just want to thank all the listeners. Appreciate you all listening and watching these. We've gotten some great commentaries, and so we appreciate the folks who have taken the time out to listen to us. Thank you all for your support of TEDCO. This is Troy Lamel Stovall, CEO of TEDCO Talks. See you next time. Thanks again.
Stay safe and stay well.